The Crow 2024. Yeah, we're here. I saw this movie, and you know it sucks. I don't need to tell you it sucks. But let's get into why this movie sucks. And even though I will tell you this movie sucks, I'm not. It's not as bad as people making this out. I feel like this is another Borderlands, where Borderlands, yeah, was a bad movie, but 0%. Are we joking with that? Right? 22%. Are we joking for this? I think this movie, the biggest problem with this movie is two things. First of all, remaking The Crow is not a bad idea. And some of you might just shit your pants that I even said that. Some of you might have been big fans of the original and been like, what? Well, how could you say that? Well, the reality is that The Crow is a concept, that it can be translated to other actors. The problem is when they remake The Crow or attempt to remake The Crow, they try to remake the Brandon Lee movie and not adapt the comic that it's based on. Because the iconic version that people know is not the comic, it's the Brandon Lee movie. And so you're always kind of drawing back to that in some regard. It's just like an X-Men right now. We are not really doing a good job at moving past the Fox X-Men movies because the versions people know are those movies. Even though you can make better versions if you kind of left those kind of things behind. That's just me, right? So I really enjoy the Brandon Lee movie. I don't think it's as much of a masterpiece as some people make it out to be. It's definitely a very good movie, and Brandon Lee's great and iconic in it for a reason. It's never been one of my favorites like it is for some people, but I will acknowledge the film's merits. I do think that film's a little bit overhyped by some people, but it's still very good. So I understand why this. So that's the first angle where this movie screwed up, is not adapting the comic and going more towards the Brandon Lee movie. I think this movie also I think the biggest problem with this movie is that I'm watching this movie. Some of the action and violence is fun. Some of the action scenes are fine. There's a couple sequences that are fine. But the main problem for me is that this film is really boring. And it's just because this is a movie where you watch the beats of the movie. You know how everything's going to play out. But it's hard to say what's missing. But there's something missing where the beats of the movie are playing out. But you're like, wait a minute. Like, there's this whole plot line before this dude becomes the Crow about his girlfriend and all this stuff. And you're going, wait a minute, I don't care about any of this. But you're watching the beats of the movie play out and you're like, you know you should be feeling something, but you're not really sure why you're not. And that's kind of this whole movie. Bill Skarsgård was fine in the movie. I definitely felt like he was trying to carry this movie, but not as much as a Brandon Lee or somebody else could have done, really. I just felt like it felt kind of bad. The action was not bad, but it was very bland and generic and not interesting. And I don't know, this whole movie was just boring. That was the biggest problem with this movie. It was a very ugly looking movie, and part of that is obvious because The Crow is a dark, ugly looking movie. The first one, though, had enough style and vision to it that it had a certain way that film looked that's very iconic. Where you watch a film like this and it's not like that, it just feels very ugly and drawn out, and it's just a very boring movie. It's a movie that you're not gonna hate while you're watching it, but when you leave, you're just gonna be like, forgettable. That's it. You're just gonna forget it. Like, I don't know. Movies like this, I think, get over dramatized as just truly awful. They're not truly awful. It's fine. It's like very mediocre. And should I put this on the worst of the year list? Maybe. Because it's not good, but I don't know. I feel like there are a couple other movies that I find more insultingly bad than this, and I think people are over dramatizing the hate for this one just a wee bit. I didn't hate it as much as some people did. I get it if you did, but really, this film is not as bad as you are hearing it is. It is just very mediocre and forgettable.